You ready? You got me running. You got me running. Got me running. Shake it, shake it, shake it, baby. Raise your hands up. Raise them up. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to the After Dark show. This is the adult relationship show that everyone is talking about. We are hitting some real hardcore conversations today, and today is no different, absolutely no different. Today we have a panel. We have a different panel this evening. We have a panel of experts in a particular area because a few weeks ago we touched on a conversation about rejection. And as a result of that conversation, I had so many people messaging me wanting to talk about this a little bit more deeper. We also had the issues of how it affects our mental health. So today we've got some experts in. We have a psychiatrist in our midst, Dr. Sheshni. We have one of our ordinary, normal panel members who has her own testimony in regards to mental health and within her family. And so we have a counsellor, trained counsellor also. So today is going to be a little bit more different. It's going to be a little different from what we normally do, because we felt that it was fitting for us to do a little bit more and deep dive a little bit more behind that black curtain and start to unpack the issues that we have, which cause us issues in relationships. So this is the relationship show. This is the relationship show. So before we go any further, what I want you to do is to go onto your social. Ding that bell so that every time this program comes on, you will be notified. And without further ado, there's one more thing. Go and grab yourself something to drink, something to eat, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So without further ado, I'm going to start to introduce my guests for this evening. And first of all, I'm going to bring in our doctor, our psychiatrist. Her name is Dr. Sheshni. And I'm going to bring her in right now. This is Dr. Sheshni. Good evening, Dr. Sheshni.
Good evening, Yvonne, Michelle. Thank you for having me. It's so exciting to be on your After Dark conversation show, talking about relationships. I'm really, really excited.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, you've got over 20 years of experience in psychiatry. You've worked privately and for the NHS. And I know at the moment you've been really working hard in terms of the impact that COVID-19 has been having on people throughout this country. I know that you've been doing many radio shows as well, giving out advice and helping people with well-being, their mental health and everything. So I want to first of all thank you for putting yourself on the line in the way that you have, and also to congratulate you for the work that you're doing as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I love sharing the knowledge, sharing the information, and creating awareness. We're all here to do the same thing, to help lift one another and transform each other and inspire, which you are doing as well. So I'm grateful to be on your show as well.
Thank you so much. So Dr. Sheshni's here. You've got a wealth of knowledge in terms of your background in psychiatry, well-being, anxiety, OCD, panic, physical health conditions. You've got so much. I mean, I could just go on and on with you've worked with Gangs of London. You've done so many different things as well throughout your career. So I am going to bring in the next person, because your expertise is going to come out throughout the show. So I'm going to bring in our next guest, who is a counsellor, and her name is Cecile Terrelong. So welcome, Cecile.
Hi, Yvonne. Hi, how you doing?
I'm very, very well. Thank you so much for being here, Cecile. Now, Cecile is a registered manager in the social care sector for over 26 years and has been supporting adults with learning disabilities and mental health and the elderly in the community. Now, I know that, Cecile, you've been a counsellor for over 16 years and you work with a wealth of different people. And so this evening, I want to thank you for being here as well. I'm so happy that you're here. I've actually known Cecile for most of my life. So far we go back. So you live around the
Yeah,
corner.
we do.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So for me, this is really exciting because, you know, even though our paths may not have crossed, now is the time for our paths to cross. And I know, because I've heard on the grapevine, that you are an expert in your field and you know your stuff. So I'm so glad and I'm privileged that you're here. So thank you for coming on the show tonight.
And I'm really happy to be here, really excited to be here, and just to be able to share with other people on the show as well. So, yeah, really looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Right. So the next person, we have a lady. She's English, but she lives in America. And her name, oh, where are you? I need to bring you up, my darling. Oh, Kim, where are you? Let's Kim Ramsey. I've got Kim Ramsey, who lives in the States but is British.
Hello, how are you?
Hi,
Well, I should
I'm
say, what's
wonderful.
popping?
How are you doing, my darling?
Not too bad. I'm a bit fidgety, so I was like trying to get the air and everything. But thank you so much for having me. I'm a
You're,
registered nurse, and I'm currently studying a master's in human sexuality over at a university in Pennsylvania called Widener. So I've been a nurse for 26 years. I've seen a number of things, so I'm quite happy to listen, to share, and collaborate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I didn't even have to do that. I didn't have to introduce you. That you just done it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kim is also one of our panel members. She's been on the show. Oh, maybe since show 8 or something like that, episode 8. Kim joined us. So Kim is one of our residents. We have many panel members, so you'll get to see. And then I'm going to bring in another panel member that hasn't been on, like Kim, in the New Look show. So I'm going to bring Sheena in. Sheena here. Hey, Sheena, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto the show.
That's all right.
Nervous.
Now, no, don't be nervous. Now, Sheena is a mother of 4. Her youngest son, David, was diagnosed with schizophrenia January 2019, and she's been working with mental health, and living with mental health is 2 different things. So Sheena's coming from the perspective of actually living with mental health as well. So we've got a wide range of panel experts in. Sheena is also the CEO of She's Natural Hair and Body Care Products so Limited. So I want to congratulate you on your new business venture as well, Sheena. So congratulations. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. And then we have our resident young man who has been here from the beginning. His name is Mr. Tony Cox. Are you there, Tony? Good evening, Tony. Now, Tony is a former IT sales manager, 20 years experience, former head tailor at Burberry, and he is also a mentoring lead at the 100 Black Men of London, as well as being a school learning and behaviour mentor. So all of our panel members have some work or have worked in the field of behavior management, mental health, whether it be from school or whether it be professionally in a hospital or doctor's surgery. So welcome to After Dark, everybody. Right, so today's discussion, as I said, it is about we are talking about rejection, and we spoke about rejection a few weeks ago, but what came out was the fact that many people were struggling. Many people were struggling and felt that we would just touch the surface of the actual subject. And so today we want to go a little bit deeper. We want to go behind the black curtain, and we want to discuss. Now, we do have a live Facebook group, and we do have a live YouTube group. Now, I'm going to ask you, those of you who are on panel, do keep a note and notice what's going on in the Facebook group, because people will ask you questions directly as well. So it's a full impacting show. So for those of you who are not used to being on this show, this is how it works. It's really, really fast hitting. The comments come fast and furious, and so you will get to respond out here. So guys, those of you who are on Facebook, those of you on Facebook and YouTube, if you have any questions this evening, put them down. Make sure you ask clear, concise questions so our panel members can articulate what you're saying and give you a good answer. All right, so you've got to remember that nobody's in your head, and that what's in your head, you have to put it on the paper so that we can read it and answer you effectively. Okay, so we know that rejection can cause... Now, we've been talking about, let me just be clear, we've been talking about rejection in terms of relationships, as in partnerships, male, female, 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 male, male, as in romantic kind of relationships. But we want to open it up a little bit tonight. We realize that rejection can cause social anxiety. It can cause feelings of abandonment. It can cause delusions. You can feel rejected on all of those things. So where I want to start the conversation tonight, I actually want to bring in Sheena first, because I want Sheena to be able to articulate her story from the person who's living with mental health, from the perspective of being a mother, and also a woman as well. Sheena, I want to ask you, there are many questions that I want to ask you, actually. One of the questions I want to ask you is, living with somebody who has mental health challenges, how impacted your own relationship with, it's your son, I know, with your son. And I'm going to drive deep down and go from there.
Put it this way, it's the relationship is very, very challenging. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If I say anything to him in particular, if I, maybe say prompt him to do something, it's met with anger, and you don't know what you're talking about. 1 minute he's nice. It's like living with someone with a split personality, to be honest with you. This is a really hard subject for me to speak on, so I'm going to try my hardest. The relationship now, it still isn't great. It's like talking to two different people. So, for instance, he could be name calling and calling me every name under the sun, and then in another breath, he's as sweet as pie.
Okay.
So it's quite a hard one. So yeah, the relationship itself it's a bit better than it was before, but in respect of the beginning, that was a shock. I actually witnessed my son change in front of me, and there's nothing I could do about it. Well, so I tried all the, I went through the authorities. Social workers weren't much use at the time. They said that I need to train him to behave better.
What can I just ask you? What was the behaviour that's what highlighted? And just to note this, Sheena, Ruth Carter is saying, "I'm with you, Sheena, sending strength to you as you share." And we're all with you. We're all holding you, babe. We're all holding you.
Okay. He was violent. Became violent. I noticed things like he was talking to himself, and he was wearing, those hats that come over your eyes and they've got the goggles on them. And he's saying that he can see clearly through the goggles, but when they were off, he couldn't see properly. Then you saw the violence. There was things like knives were going missing. Drugs was coming in the house. And then he just, when we tried to challenge him, he became violent with his stepdad, pulled a machete out on us, threatened to stab us. It didn't matter how many times we complained at the time. It's almost like nobody was listening to me. So the only thing I had left to do at the time was I had to kick him out. I was forced to kick my son out. And that was, even then, I was met with threats of child abandonment, child neglect. The police eventually took my side and saw the situation and said, no, this has got to stop, because they spent many times here, 2-3 hours in the evening, just trying to comfort us as a family, because we just didn't know what to do, because social workers weren't helping. It's only when the police intervened and they said, well, it's a safeguarding against them if they don't do something about it, because she's done everything she can. It's only then that the police arranged for him to go into a bail hostel. And then that's when the ball started to roll, where I was starting to hear people talk to me. They started to listen to me. But it was a horrible and a very long battle. And we're still fighting now, but it's better because now it's been treated. But then we still have the battle with him taking his medication. There's the threats now about him going back into a home, so it's an ongoing battle. And so I have to remain positive as much as I can in all of this. I still look to, I still try and find strength in other things I do, and just try and be there for other people, because that kind of takes away my pain and my suffering of what I have to go through as well. And it is a mental strain on me as well. As a result of all of this, I now have depression myself, going through all of what I've been going through.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Sheena. And I know that has not been easy. And I purposely started the show this way because I wanted to get this part out so that we can focus on some solution. We can focus on how to move forward. We can focus on how to bring about change, how to help, because there are many, many thousands of people out there who are struggling in their relationships right now because of mental health. Now, it may not be the same scenario as Sheena, but there are similar situations going on all around. And we know that this is happening, and we know that things have got a lot worse because of the situation that we're just coming out of, the COVID-19. So we know that this is a major, major issue that many, many people are facing. So I really want to say thank you again, Sheena, for sharing. So many people are just sending messages. Julie Bullymore sends support and so much respect for your honesty and strength. I really, really want to salute you for taking to be panel today. So,
Thank you.
so guys, heard now we're talking about how mental health affects now. So we've heard mother and son. We want to keep this quite broad, so we can talk about relationships, partner to partner, mother to son, daughter to father. However, it's relationships. Now we know that sometimes when relationships break down, we have this is where things really start to uncover themselves, start to see different behaviors in. So I'm going to bring in some of the experts now, because Sheena was saying that, you know, she noticed a change in her son's behavior. He was talking to himself. He was doing unusual things, like wearing goggles and saying that he could see clearly, goggles, and knives were cutting and things, and he became violent. What are the signs, Dr. Chesney? I'm going to bring you. What are the major signs, and what can we do quickly if we identify with such behaviors?
Yes, before I start, just to say thank you, Sheena, for sharing that. I know it was quite emotional for you, but a lot of people can relate to what you've shared with us today. And I think, just hearing your story and about how difficult the journey was to where you are now, initially it was quite difficult with identifying, as Yvonne Michelle is saying, with the symptoms of schizophrenia, but also there were a lot of other underlying issues, and you've got an emotional bond with your son, so it made it even more difficult to get the help, as well as try and help him and manage the situation. But sounds like the journey has been long, it's been difficult, but you are at a place where you are much better. With schizophrenia, as you described with your son, Sheena, and with others that are listening, it is difficult to actually pick up the signs when someone has a mental illness. And especially if it's a loved one, we don't actually want to see what's going on, or we might feel overwhelmed with what we are faced with. And especially because if you're not a trained therapist or not a trained professional, it might be all very new to you. But usually the typical signs when someone has a mental illness like schizophrenia, it is a serious mental illness. It affects the way the person thinks, they feel, and they behave. So they start to become paranoid about people around them. So they might be, the description we've heard about the goggles. They also start to hear things that are not real. So they might hear voices or have hallucinations and delusions, what is what we call it. So these are the positive symptoms of schizophrenia. And usually the only way you can pick it up is by observation and listening to that person. So I think Sheena and her family, you were able to pick that up because you were able to see what was going on and observe, and you were able to listen to what he was telling you. So I think that's a key part in this whole process, and especially with relationships. If we're looking at a loved one that's having this illness, it's about listening to what they are saying. Even though it's very hard for us at that time to see, that person is not the person that we know, and you saw the changes, the behavioral changes, but then the other issues cropped in, about drugs, about violence. So you could see in front of your eyes that things were changing, initially starting off with very subtle signs, and then later becoming to a point where it was becoming a problem where it needed attention. It needed medical attention. It needed psychiatric input. He needed medication. It needed the input of the police. And then as well as you and your family understanding what he was going through and then helping him. So I think for me, it was really, your story actually covered so many aspects of relationships, of the journey a person goes through when they get diagnosed with schizophrenia, and also how the impact is on the family and the relationships. And I think the one that does stick out is the rejection probably he felt, because obviously rejection is what we define as is when someone is being pushed away or something is being pushed away in a relationship or even in social settings. And in the broader context, so initially there was rejection from you all as a family, because obviously you didn't know how to manage it. It was something new. You were feeling overwhelmed and you didn't feel like you could manage it, and you were doing justice to him to be able to manage it. And however, you're able to then get other people to help you in that relationship, which it worked out in a positive way, thankfully, for you and for your son and for the family. But then in the wider context, people can be rejected in social settings. So for him, even having a mental illness like schizophrenia, we know there's a lot of stigma attached to it as well. Whilst the family might become very understanding, loving, compassionate about what he's going through and what he's experiencing, and understand the illness and learn to educate themselves, people around them might find it difficult as well to handle, and also to manage. So then the person actually gets rejected in the wider community as well. And we know in our communities there is still a lot of stigma, because there's a lot of people that still don't understand these illnesses. They don't understand that, it doesn't mean if you've got an mental illness that you should be there should be stigma. You should be discriminated because of it, because there's a lot of people around, that are walking around with mental illness. At least one person, 1 in 4 persons has experienced some form of mental illness. Looking at schizophrenia, we know it occurs in 1 in 100 people. The effects on the carers, as you've described, Sheena, is depression, because of the difficulties you were faced with, and probably feeling so overwhelmed with the experience of your loved one, and especially that being your son, it affected you in such a way that you became depressed as well. So it's interesting to see how the illness of one person affects all the relationships. And that's why it's so important for people to get the right help, to get the right care, and communicate and listen to one another, and also create the awareness in communities about these really important issues.
Thank you for that. That is true, and I totally agree with you. And I mean, this started really. If I think about it, this is going way back when he was in upper school.
Yeah.
Where he'd be getting into trouble, he'd be arguing with the teachers, be having constant fights, even picking on the teachers, threatening, telling them that his mom's going to come down to school and bomb it, all kind of foolishness. And then what I said with regards to the violence, that was the eye opener, because first of all, it was my knives going missing, to the point we were hiding things in our bedroom, locking it all away. You okay, what's going on here? When it really dawned on me that things was tips up is when I went to KFC with my sister and my son, and I chose to sit out in the car. Saw David on one of the high streets with his group of friends, and he was there dancing, and his friends actually walked off. He didn't even realize they had left him, and they left him to dance on his own. And then I just saw him sort of like walking and skipping, trying to find them. And for me as the mum to see that, I can't even tell you how painful that was, that cut. So even though I tried to authorities and scream for help, nobody was listening. They found every excuse to say that my son was badly behaved. It's the parenting. They found everything negative. He was in and out of trouble with the police. The amount of times I was in the police station with him, and he said he felt untouchable at that point. He goes, "Oh, I'll never get in trouble." He actually started to believe he would get into trouble. Now it escalated where fines were coming through the door because he'd break some curfew in town or some rule. They say don't spit on the pavement. He would go and spit. They say don't ride your bike through the middle of the town centre. He would do it anyway. So everything he knew or was told he shouldn't do, he'd done the opposite to. So that's when I knew that everything was escalating. We eventually had the social workers in, But like I said, that was after I'd kicked him out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they tried their hardest for me to take him back. And I said, no. I said, I can't live with him. I can't take it anymore. Because if you imagine, especially when I was in the house on my own, he would do things like he'd push the door, you know, like in a creepy movie or something, or he'd make funny noises, like the voice wasn't even human, you know, to the point I was actually scared of my own son, frightened of him, because I didn't know what was going on, and like how my parents would say, I the devil in him. Do you know what I mean? So, and my family, you're saying about family, my family are not great with the support. I'm just going to get that out there now. And I've been hearing more and more cases where families aren't as supportive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're basically left to your own to look after, to take care of business. I used to work full time, some crazy hours. Yeah. I work part time now and got my home business now, and I'm focusing on that, because for me, that's the only way I can be around my son to know that all is well. He doesn't have any friends now. So we've gone from seeing a popular young man to somebody who has no friends. He doesn't know how to sort of like work with that anymore. That's no longer important to him. He doesn't ring anybody, doesn't go anywhere. You know, it's horrible.
So we can see that the impact of actually what's going on in his life, how it's impacting him, and then on the flip of that script is how it's affecting you, and then on the other side of that is how it affects the rest of the family. So you know, I want to get everybody in and have a chance to be involved in this conversation. Now I know that we have Cecile here, who is a counsellor. So from the perspective now, because I want to also widen it up, so it's not just about schizophrenia, it is about mental health. It is about how we navigate and help our loved ones, of, you know, whoever it is, our friends, through those times, because we know, as I said before, that mental health is really, really relevant and it's prevalent now. So Cecile, so, you know, in your experience and from what you've seen and obviously what you've heard tonight, you know, what would be the underlying thing that you would advise if somebody, for instance, was at home and they could see that the behavior of a loved one has changed? What would you say would be the first thing that you would advise them to do as a counsellor?
I think really it's they need to get the support, and in my experience, you have to scream and shout for that. It doesn't come easily, because I see it both sides. So I work with people who are already diagnosed, so they're already in within that system, and then I work with I'm counselling young people who the signs are just coming through. And I think it's about, you have to get the support, and you really have to go and shout and get your point across and make yourself heard. I mean, one of the things that Sheena said was train him to behave better. That's what she was told. And that's not the first time I've heard things like that. And that's not how it goes. You can't do that. That doesn't exist. You can't, you know. But I think for me, I would be saying to the mum, to the family, you need to get the support, and you've got to go and really push the point, like you've had to, Sheena, to get them to listen to you, and also to get them to listen to him as well. And anybody else who's going through that situation, you've really got to get them to understand what you can see, and what you see is actually real. You know, because quite often, you know, mums will take their children, and it doesn't matter how old those children are, whether they're grown adults or they're little, you take them to the GP, and the GPs kind of think, well, you know, that's just mum. But actually, if you're seeing things and you're hearing things, you've got to go and talk to somebody. And that's what that would be my first protocol.
Okay.
And I think the family, sometimes the lack of support with family is because they don't understand. So you're trying to educate them as well as trying to support your family member. And that then takes its toll on yourself. But I think a lot of it is that lack of understanding, because I see so many individuals where the families have, you know, distanced themselves, they don't get involved because they don't know what to do, or they're ashamed, or they're embarrassed, or, you know, all of those things. But yeah, you kind of have to talk to them, let them know what is going on, and try and explain it so that they can understand it. It's not easy. It's not easy.
No, it doesn't sound, as if it is an easy process to go through. And from what I can of hearing from Sheena, and what I know, is that this whole process has not been easy. The last couple of weeks ago, when we were on the show, what came out of the show with rejection, somebody also was saying that that because they were rejected, that they started self-harming, and that they were still doing that now. And so my thing is that I know that that's kind of like the beginning of, or maybe it's not, but it's at the early stages of. And I was just going to bring Tony in, and he's just disappeared, but never mind. When he comes back, oh, you're there. Oh, no, you're not. So hello,
Yeah, I'm back.
Tony. Yeah, because I want to cover, because I want to make this conversation a little bit broader, because we did have that disclosure on the show a couple of weeks ago, which was one of the things that sparked this show off. One of the reasons why we were having this show today. I know that Tony works with young people in. He's a mentor in school, and so why I wanted to bring Tony in was from the perspective of catching it early. Now, I'm not saying that that's not the thing that the family would see, but sometimes what we see, or what we're learning, is that sometimes it's coming out in school. There's behaviors are coming out in school. So as a mentor, Tony, what would you say is the signs for you as somebody that's in school, and that how you would approach a mother or family member in regards to this?
You know, I did post up the early intervention is very, very important in this situation, and you know, quite clearly, you know, there's a lot of things that have to be considered. You know, you don't see things early. People's mental health changes as they grow older. So you might have the perfect child up until they're mid-teens, and then all of a sudden their characteristics change, and those characteristics can easily just be taken for that time of their life. But one of the things that I have been trained to recognize is mental health in children, and that's via a course called a mental health first aiders, a course. And I hope some of you in the room and outside will appreciate that particular qualification, because it seems to me to be one of the most important courses which recognizes mental health especially in young children, in young adults. Being able to identify them during their schooling years, during their educational years, can be such a huge factor, because effectively catching those things early will affect how they're going to live the rest of their lives. You know, if we don't catch them early, you know, could lead into crime. And we all know what happens when you end up in a criminal situation. You end up in the school to prison pipeline, and that effectively rules out lots of options going forward in terms of opportunities. I mean, how do you recognize it? There are just so many different factors. One of the things that I always tell parents who come through sort of my school of learning is that you have to see a child going through a change, for instance, like puberty or adolescent, as a similar change of personality to that which you expect at a child at 2 years old. So when a child hits 2 years old, they develop different levels of serotonin in the brain, which affects how they behave. And we call that the terrible twos. Now, those similar changes in the brain occur around 9 or 10, possibly up to 13 or 14. But effectively, it's those serotonin levels in the brain which are affecting a child's behaviors. And we could see that as a search for independence. We could see that as being becoming insular. But they need to be diagnosed. They need to be understood. And it's very, very important that, you know, if there are any signals which a trained mental health first aider is looking for or is capable of identifying are spotted, that they're dealt with. So I'm not going to go too much further into, because I'm, you know, once I understand that there are issues, then it's a case of signposting and understanding where you can send people or children, more importantly, in terms of, you know, what specialist help they will need going forward. But it is very important that we as a community ensure that we have people who can identify those triggers and those signals. And so, you know, what I would, you know, I work in a number of different schools, and one of the things I always do is go into the school and say, how many mental health first aiders have you got in the school? Because if you haven't got them, or you haven't got enough of them, you need more. In an ideal world, every teacher should have that course under their belt, because it is so important. Part of my job as a learning mentor or behavior mentor is trying to deal with kids when the school have run out of options. They're like, I don't know what to do with this child. His behavior's beyond what we can work with. So can you come and help out? And it's at that point where I'm walking in the door and being asked to work one-on-one with children and seeing what their behaviors are, identifying what coping strategies are being used to deal with their different behaviors, and then either signposting or dealing directly with the issue. And I can see Natural is putting in the group that Manhood Academy Global do a lot of this work. Yes, I know Kahinde very well. He's a very good guy at this. And I also work myself with an organisation called 100 Black Men of London. But this is more within the school system itself, where we really need all teachers to understand the importance of mental health first aiding. Yeah, I think, you know, that's really you know, where I'd say from a strategy point of view, we really need to ensure that we've got these people in the community and we can understand where to find them. You know, mentoring, which Manhood, 100, Origin, Westside Young Leaders, etc. do, is fantastic. But we still, even within those organisations, we still occasionally come across issues of mental health which need to be addressed in the right way and signposted to the right people.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Tony. You touched on some really key points as you were talking. My mind was just kind of going 10 to the dozen as you were talking, because I know that you're based in London, and I know that there are things outside London, but maybe not as prevalent as what they are in London. And so I'm not sure what other support mechanisms there are. But one thing I know for sure, there needs to be much more well-being strategies and well-being provisions within the school system coming September. And Ruth Carter has just said that as well. There needs to be much more wellbeing support for schools come September. Absolutely, because we know, because of what we have gone through as globally through this COVID-19, we know that it's going to have an impact, and it is having an impact on young people. I just want to read out some of the comments here. Lauren here is saying there are so many different mental health issues and everyone reacts to them differently. There is no real timetable for any of them. There are only factors that can be identified as possible signs of mental health illness. People need to begin to research about mental health and gain knowledge about them in order to recognize factors and deal with behaviors that can be seen as challenges for that individual. And that's come from Lauren. So basically, it seems like Lauren's saying that it's down to us all really to be vigilant, to understand, to know what is it. And I think right about now, we cannot be ignorant now because of the world that we're living in. And I think we do need to understand what mental health is. I think some people are very ignorant to it, and will just kind of shut it down because it doesn't actually affect them at the time, but it's affecting so many people.
And I think one of the things that just to piggyback on what you just said, yes, it's important that we create networks of links of people who are in the providing assistance to parents and schools. As I said, if you're a parent, for instance, you should be able to go into your school and find out, about, the school's provisions for mental health, for PCHE, for mental health first aiders, etc. But sometimes we look at children slightly differently to the way we might look at adults. We look at them from the point of view, well, this child is misbehaving. What does that misbehavior tell us about the child? Is it a call? Is this a call for assistance? I come across in my school work a lot of children who suffer abuse at home. I bet back in the day, a child acting up would just get too lash, and it's sometimes cultural differences which the system sometimes finds difficult to understand. If a child comes from, for instance, the Caribbean or comes from an African background, the levels of sort of brutalization in the home tend to be higher than within other communities. And sometimes, it's very difficult to identify where the mental health starts and where it needs to be addressed, because is it something that's happening at school or is it something happening at home? So for some children I work with, their calming zone, their peaceful place is actually at school, not at home.
Yes, the environment is key, right?
Yeah.
And they say that, one of the things that I've learned in my training and work with young people is that they are not their behavior, they're their environment first. Check the environment first, and then you will start to see what the underlying reasons are for their behavior. We've got here Shelley Timmis says all teachers need to understand and follow set guidelines. I have personal stories that a teacher actually made a child's mental health worse and called them out for their coping strategies they were doing in class. That is something I know to be true as well. I work in high schools, so I know this and I see this. We've also got Shell that says the stigma around mental health in the Black community causes not causes one not to seek help. People need to understand mental health is not who one is, but a sickness that one has to live with. That's what Shell says. Also, oh, Shelley Thomas Timmer says the Ollie Foundation and Young Minds are in schools in Hertfordshire. So that's good to know that Hertfordshire is getting some support. I know that I don't know. I know that Bedfordshire gets some support. I know that London is getting support because Tony works in London. I know that much. But just to change the conversation up slightly, Shell Williams says, being in a religious setting is one of the worst places for one who suffers from mental illness. And I want to know, does any one of our experts want to come forward? I would have asked Kim, but she's gone when she comes back. So any one of you can jump in wherever. That statement, being in a religious setting is one of the worst places for one who suffers from mental illness. Who wants to jump in there?
Okay, I'll jump in.
Go.
I'll jump in. So I was talking to a young girl a couple of weeks ago. We had a couple of sessions together, and her anxiety and depression was quite prevalent. But the family are a religious family, and they would not take on board what she was saying at all. So she was struggling with that because she was looking at her identity, at her whether she was heterosexual, whether she was bisexual, and she was battling with whether she could even be bisexual, because in her religion that was not going to happen. And she really struggled, and that just made the situation even worse for her. And then she stopped coming to sessions. So I couldn't do any more work with her around that. But it was definitely a battle between what I would like to be and what my religion tells me I should be. Very difficult. That was very difficult.
So we can see that there's a lot of outside things that go on. And I know that Sheena was shaking her head. She was like, yeah, like this. So Sheena, I want you to come back in and let us know why you were agreeing with that statement that was made.
Well, basically, a lot of my family are in the church, and dad was a bishop. You got my aunties who are like missionaries. My mum and them, was in the church hard, and the illness actually runs deep. It runs in my family quite deep. Okay, on my dad's side of the family, and my auntie who has schizophrenia as well, bless her. I can still remember the times how the so-called church brethrens treated her. So they, she'd be like, maybe say just going around pottering around the church, putting plants around the church to pretty it up, and she was always trying to keep the place tidy because to her church should be kept tidy. And they'd sneak up behind her back and say she's soon got the mad people them house. I wonder if she'd take her tablets to them. These were church people.
Right.
These were pastors and deacons and so-called, God-fearing sisters in the church. So that was my experience of witnessing and hearing.
Right. I hear you. I think we have to remember that, in everything, it's people. And wherever there are people, there will be problems. And so, and that's not excusing how those people have treated other people, because we all have to be responsible for how we treat each other. But I do know, I've seen it, I've seen it. I was raised in the church, so I've seen it. I know that it exists, but I believe that religion, as Ruth Carter says, religion, society, and families have an impact. All have an impact in someone's mental health, you know, and having good mental health is something that we want to support. We want to put that forward. And in the second part of the show, that's what we're going to be focusing on, is how we flip this and how we help those who are struggling with their mental health to have a better mental health. Now, I am going to say, and I am going to plug a little bit here, because Cecile is one of our counsellors. So if there is anyone who does need some counselling, Cecile is on hand to take that referral and help you on your way. Dr. Chesney, I would assume as well, we haven't discussed it, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm going to throw it out there to say that if necessary, then we can also refer to Dr. Chesney as well in their professional capacity. As I said 2 weeks ago, we had somebody make a disclosure on the show in the feed saying that they were self-harming. And so I felt that it was necessary to add these elements to the show moving forward, that should anybody need someone to talk to or need some expert advice, that we have experts on hand to refer you to, so that you know that you are never ever alone and that there is always somebody there at the end of the phone. All right, so yeah, so we're gonna what time are we on? Oh no, we're good for time. We're coming up to the second part of the show, but I still want to stay here as I think it was, where did she leave? Lauren says, yes, there are free mental health courses online for anyone who wants to gain more knowledge. So Kim, you're back in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I've got the most sketchiest internet. I feel like I bought it from Del Boy, but it's
dear.
actually a very well good provider.
Okay.
A couple of things that I wanted to, that brought up, I could really strongly relate to Sheena. My very first boyfriend had schizophrenia, and what was so fascinating was that as the behavior escalated, the coping mechanism of both myself and his family members was to say, well, you know, it's him. This is part of him. This is who he is. And everything was hidden with a really good sense of humor. He was an excellent kind of comedian, but behind that comedy was his anger. It brought me back to a time where we were at his parents' house and we were eating, and I said something that he did not like, and he just backhanded me off of the chair, right? Just like,
wow.
Oops, like got, you know, like a straight backhand clap, fell backwards off the chair. And the family continued eating because it was so normal, the violence was, that at that point, you know, everybody just didn't kind of have the wherewithal to identify that the behavior was not the norm of a regular reality. And it took a lot of realignment from different people for me to understand that, okay, this is actually not cool. You know, this is not acceptable behavior. So I think that sometimes we can normalize odd behavior. The other thing that really comes to mind is that oftentimes, and when Sheena spoke, she kind of brought up so much stuff. So I'm trying to remember as I go along and before my internet cuts out. So sorry about the ghetto internet. Okay, so just work with me. One of the things that I felt was that when Sheena was talking to the social workers, they did not believe that Sheena as a mother was competent to actually say, yeah, this isn't my son. His behavior is not, you know, and this is a woman who birthed the young man, she grew him up, right? Clearly she has understanding about her son, right? And I'm saying this, obviously you don't know my background, but I have been a nurse for 26 years. I worked at some very big facilities, and I worked in the emergency room. So I worked with people who were brought in floridly psychotic, some that pulled out knives on me during a triage, some that decided to, you know, whop me one. Well, history before, so can tell you that I can take a punch in the face. It's okay. It's not really what I really want to do, but it's not something that I won't shy from. Every time that someone has brought, a family member has brought their son, daughter, mother to me, it's because that family member has said something's not right. You know, okay, I don't know, let's call her Jane. Jane has been up for 3 days. You know, she's writing numbers on the wall. Now that's a real red flag. If you're not sleeping, something's wrong. You know, some people, we're not talking about bleaching and yeah, man is going to a rave and after that I'm going to go to the house party and I'm going to you know, I'm old school, so blues and going 2-3 days without sleep, that's one thing. But when your family member has lost touch with reality and they're placing another reality into something that you know not to be true, you actually have to say to them, look, you know, something's not right with what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, but something's not right. You cannot collude with somebody when you can see all these behaviors going on. And we don't, for me, prior to getting into the industry, I did not have the words. I just knew something wasn't right. And you can see, you know, you can't dismiss it as eccentricity. Then the last thing was, and this, a large quantity of Black Brits are diagnosed or misdiagnosed. Now, my former partner was diagnosed for a very long time with schizophrenia. His diagnosis now is bipolar disorder, right? And we've had a huge gap now, maybe of about 30 years. But I feel very strongly when we are dealing with matters of race, especially in the context of Black people being continuously diagnosed, and they are really diagnosed. In actual fact, my understanding is that Black British people have the highest rate of depression outside of the African diaspora, is that at some point we as people of color need to start making our own models and hypotheses, because medications traditionally are used on our race. But are we going to medicate people, or are we going to give them, you know, like what Sheena says, a quality of life? And that's the major thing that I felt from you when you were talking, Sheena, was that my son, and people do age out of this kind of comedy or dancing. And what you spoke about, it resonated with me when you said he was dancing in the street, because that reminded me of my ex-partner, that he would be that entertainer, perform, because guess what? People like that. And then they laugh and you feel like you're part of something. But after a while, your sense of humor gets aged out. Does that resonate with you, or does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
and
I mean,
then
even
they,
now,
and they become isolated, and then the depression comes back and it's crushing, you know. So I honestly feel that at some point we have to start writing our own hypotheses, our own models, and we need to look at depression all the way through the generations, because you can meet elderly people in their 70s, 80s, people that are under fear of deportation because they're a Windrush individual, or their kids ain't shit, excuse my French, but they don't want to take care of their elderly parents. They don't even want to send them a card, and everybody's just gathering like vultures waiting for them to dead. You understand? We've got a lot to look at.
We've got a lot to look at, for real. I mean, even up to what's happened recently as well is he tends to sit in his room in the dark. So I've reported all of that, had the meetings, and all I'm getting now is, oh, we'll see how he is in a couple of weeks' time. Oh, we'll have to up his meds. I said, up which meds? And then it was, oh, maybe you need to look about moving into a bigger house. I said, I'm not moving. I said, I've been here for 20 years, right? This is all he knows. For me to then move him out into another house, that's just going to make things worse. And oh, we could put him in residential. So it's almost like they're trying to, because I've said to them that I need more support with him. Their version of support is, okay, then we can talk about him going into residential, or having a supported living flat, or having his meds. And if he doesn't agree to that, we could be looking at him going back on the injections. I've declined all of that because I've seen what my son looks like on the injection, and it is not nice.
And it's not really for everybody's body chemistry. And I also, and to defend the psychiatric profession, because I'm not bashing just for the sake of bashing. What I'm saying is that the resources are viewed through a white lens.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying. You understand? So it's like, if you're a person, your son grew up around a family, around people. It's, why should he be placed in a flat, heavily medicated? For whose benefit is that? Because that's not quality of life for him.
No.
Are we actually looking at the real issue, or are we just medicating just so that his behavior is going to be curbed and he's manageable? And that's the thing that I get. I'm very frustrated, and I saw that a lot in the emergency room.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest, right? When we had, he's only recently gone over to Twinwoods. Prior to that, he was with CAMS, and oh my God, they're amazing, absolutely amazing. They put everything in place, and because they've seen how badly I've been let down, and they saw how badly my son had been let down, it was like a full force, and they were all black as well, funny enough. The nurses, the coordinators, the doctors, they were all, ethnic minority. And they really, because they were so, they just basically fell in love with him. They just said he's such a lovable person. They just went over and beyond. And when they passed him over to Twinwoods, they were very clear with them to ensure that his needs are met, that mum isn't let down. So they put in a very strong case, just to let them know.
Can I just
ask? When you have an advocate, sorry, this is when you have an advocate for you that speaks the language, that understands the system, that can say, look, I hear what you're saying, but the mum is saying this. And I'm going to go with mum because she's known him for a lot longer than you have. They may feel like, well, you're biased. But it's your child. You want quality of life for your son. You want mental wellness for your son.
Of course, yeah. So they were really good.
I was just going to ask you, Sheena, do you think that, because you mentioned the fact, and I just want to pick up on something that Tony's put on the feed, that CAMS can be different based on where you live, and that's very, very true. Because I've heard conflicting stuff about CAMS. Yeah? I know that they are good, but I've also heard that they are not good. Okay, so I've heard.
I was worried about that, but I had a really good team. We had a very good team.
Good, and I'm glad about that. But what I'm going to ask you is this: is that, do you think it made a difference to the level of his care because the team that served him were of the ethnic minority group?
Yes, it did. And I, when I had the doctors, when I had the team coming out from Twinwoods as well, again, I stipulated to them, so I'm not being funny. I said, but I'm only dealing with certain ethnic minorities now where my son's concerned, because I've been let down so badly that I can't see any more harm come to my child. No more distress. So yes, to be totally honest, yeah.
Okay.
The team was beneficial.
Can I ask? Sorry, Sheena.
I was just about to bring you in, Dr. Zephyr, actually. Come in.
Was that Twinwoods in Bedford, in Clapham?
That's who's dealing with him now, but it was the CAMS team.
I've worked with Twinwoods.
Yeah,
I've worked with them as well. I was training at Twinwoods. It's a very good team.
Yeah, and I've got a good team with them as well.
Yeah, because they have the intensive support team as well. I think what I'm hearing a lot is, in terms of mental health, and I think everyone's been, I think the information that has come is so important. I really loved what Tony said about mental health aid awareness. That's so important. I think we all need to become more aware. And that is what I was trying to say is we all need to have more awareness and education about mental health problems. And I think it starts in our communities because we know, I think few of you all have said about stigma. There is still a lot of stigma attached to mental illness, and it's happening with our own people. That our own people are actually looking down upon us when we confide in them and we tell them that we have someone who's got a mental health issue, or or if you tell them that you've got depression. How many people are willing to actually listen to you and actually acknowledge that you've got a problem? I think really this is a key issue that needs to be addressed. And the more that we create awareness, the more we create understanding and educate people around us, the better it's going to be in terms of identifying, as Tony said, identifying people and identifying children when they are young, when they're experiencing behavioral problems, identifying them in the school setting. Few of the ladies that sent messages, Lauren and I think it was Kelly, spoke about school settings where it's not being identified in schools, and then the children are presenting as and being labeled as behavioral problems. So I think all of these things can be addressed with education, with incorporating well-being sessions in school, and also more community awareness. So whether it's more meetings, online meetings going forward, more support groups being created, to support people like Sheena and other people. I think Kim also spoke about really important issues. She spoke about how, in the hospital setting, we do see people that come to us quite floridly psychotic. They come with knives, they come with the violence, the aggression, the agitation. But in order to prevent them coming at that stage, we as a community, I think we are failing in terms of actually trying to identify these people with mental health problems. We are failing to actually get the resources and the support groups that are available. So Tony spoke about the different groups. What is it? The 100 Black Men group. And then there's other support groups that are available. I think it's important for us to draw on whatever resources there are, and also like the mental health awareness and the education services. I just want to touch a little bit before anyone chips in about treatment, because as a doctor and psychiatrist, we always advise a holistic treatment. So even for myself, it's not about just prescribing an antipsychotic or prescribing medication for any mental health condition. It's always an holistic approach. And I think it needs to be tailored person to person. And I do think what Kim said is important. We need to draw our own hypothesis because we all are different. We're coming from different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different ethnicities. And each of us can be understood in terms of our culture as well as, what defines us. So I think in terms of treatment, it needs to be tailored. So what might work for one group of people might not work for the other group. But I think we can use a holistic approach. So for me, it's not about just prescribing medication. Definitely, I've seen people, and I think Sheena's spoken about medication. Medication does help, but there's only so much medication can do. It's about the psychological aspects, about doing counseling, which we've got our other the other person that's on today, that's the expert in counseling, and also we've got the education. So Cecile, it is, that's counselor online today, and then it's about the education. I think key is education. spreading the word, creating awareness, talking about it so that we're normalizing mental illness. Because even, Oprah Winfrey was talking about normalizing mental illness. We need to come to a point where if someone says, I'm going to harm myself or I'm feeling suicidal, that we are going to be able to know what to do, how to react, how to respond, how to listen, and how to communicate with that person. And then the social aspects, so it's biopsychosocial. So the social aspects is the social workers getting involved. We know Sheena said she had social workers involved as well. So it's a whole holistic approach, getting the support groups, charity organizations, and now we're moving more online. There's so much more online resources and helplines that are available. So I want you to share that it's a holistic approach. It's not just that we're treating a person in a box and we're just treating them, it's like a black and white type of thinking. It should be a holistic approach, and it should be something that we each person's responsibility. So it's not going to just be my responsibility as a doctor and psychiatrist to treat, but it should be everyone's responsibility, from the parent, from the person who's actually unwell, from the GP to the teachers, to the community, to the religious organizations as well, where we know that there still seems to be a lot of stigma. When I
you.
have a chance later, I do want to share a positive experience about religion in the hospital setting at some point.
Thank you, Dr. Chesney. Can I just bring Cecile in, and then we're going to bring in Tony? I think they just want to pick up on what you was just saying. Cecile, come in for me.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of say about the schools, because I've done some work in about 3 of the schools in central Bedfordshire, and it's the counsellors are there, but some of the children are being sent to see the counsellor rather than them choosing to go. You also get some of them going because they need to see somebody, but they're not opening up, because actually it's all done within school. The kids know they're going to the counsellor because they can see them standing outside the counsellor's door. So sometimes it doesn't come across as a positive experience for them. And like Shelley had said on there, and you also agreed, Yvonne, about the strategies that some of the young people use, and then the teachers calling them out. I mean, I've had experience where they've been given passes, so they have a pass and they can literally just go, stand up, show the pass and go out the door. And teachers have then said, why are you going? Where are you going?
Yeah.
Can't you wait till the end? And that's not what it's about. The pass is for them to go because they feel like they need to go then. So I think the schools need to have, they need more training. And there is loads of training out there. There's lots of online training, and the teachers need to have more training, and they need to be able to work with the young people so that they can get that support there before they then turn 18, like Sheena's son, and they still haven't got the support, So I think it's about getting into the schools and doing some more work with them. How that's going to happen, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, that's what they need to be doing.
Thank you for that, Cecile. Thank you, Tony. Come in. Then I'm gonna pose a question from what we've got on Facebook. So we've got some questions in Facebook. So Tony, come in.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up on what we've heard so far. Again, a little bit more about schools in my own experience. So this is actually quite an apt time to be talking about schools and the school system, because the one thing that we appear to have now identified as a result of the death of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matters movement is that education is failing. We have racism rampant around the world because of a bad education system. Yeah, not a lack of education, it's a bad education. Yeah, so we've got the system generating racism through the methodology in which it delivers a message of this is right and this is wrong. And it's now incumbent on many schools to review their practices and say, okay, what do I need to do as a school to ensure that we stop this whole practice of developing racism or white privilege or white supremacy or institutionalized racism or systemic racism? It's got so many titles, you know, unconscious bias, you name it. They're all out there, but they all fall under what happens to a child when it's growing up and how it's developed educationally. And to many people who I've had this conversation with about, well, what can you change about schooling? I say to them, well, if you don't think that these problems exist, go look at the work of Miss Jane Elliott, the blue-eyed, brown-eyed test. Because when you do that, you'll understand how we teach incorrectly, how schooling is miseducating our children. Yeah. One of the big issues is that many of the schools I go to, and I teach in a lot of different schools, I work in a lot of different schools, and I do that for a reason, is I like to see the breadth of work that we have in our establishment. And I honestly can say I'm in a network of Black teachers. I talk with other Black teachers, of which Kahinde from Manhood Academy is one, and many others. And we all recognize that the universal problem. Most schools are made up of white middle-class women. So when you have a school in an urban neighborhood and you have a mixed group of students, whether they be Asian, Indian, Black, you know, yellow, whatever color, whatever religion, so on and so forth, these women, all well-intended, unfortunately, just don't have the life experience to be able to deal with the different cultures and different requirements of our children. So hence why quite often I get that call. I've got a kid in the school, he's misbehaving, we're at our wit's end and we don't know how to deal with him. Can you come and help? So I walk into school and the first thing I do is I scan through the staff to see what have you got. Have you got mental health first aiders in the school? And have you got children that resemble the child, whether that child's Black, white, Asian, whatever? Yeah, obviously white is always going to be represented, but you know, most often when I'm brought into that scenario, there isn't a Black teacher in sight. You know, and I'm like, that's why you got a problem. Because as well wishing as you might wish to be, and as with clever intelligence on how to deal with mental health, you're not actually touching base with that child. You're not able to have that child's lived experience. You probably come from an area 10 miles south of this school, which puts you in a nice white catchment area. Yeah, you didn't grow up in this area.
But what happens, Tony, and I know that we've kind of digressed because this is not just about education. I know that we have to touch on it. We're touching different things today, and which highlights actually, and I'm glad this has happened because it shows me the shows that we need to do. Yeah, it highlights the areas of where we need to go. So we will do a show on education. We will, for sure. But what happens, just to throw this in, what happens when you're in a school that has a mixed staff and it's still failing? And let me put the premise in. The school is very mixed. The staff are also very mixed, highly qualified. What then? What is the issue in that school, do you think?
Okay, so I always ask the question, where is that school? Because again, I will most of the time when you find a high rate of diversity within the staff, it's in an urban area, and those schools generally aren't receiving anywhere near the level of funding, anywhere near the level of investment required to make them an overachieving school.
Yeah, we have one in Luton. The reason why I ask you that because we have one in Luton.
There are exceptions to the rule because in Southeast London there's a school called Brampton Academy. Yeah, look it up if you want to see one of the highest ranked schools in Great Britain. Yeah, I think they've received the highest number of Oxbridge candidates of any school in the whole of the United Kingdom. Yeah, and it's a mainly black school, Brampton Academy, Southeast London. Yeah, look at places like Amos Bursary, again another independent Southeast London organization.
We
So
have
it is mainly to do with the catchment area, what the school is getting, because quite often some of these schools they're just not getting the funding required.
Yeah.
And they end up with the right people, but not with the right support.
Not with the right resources. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is a school in Newton that I know of that I work quite a lot in, actually. And the staffing is diverse, very, very diverse. But that is the reason why the school is struggling. It's not getting the resources or the funding that it needs. And I just wanted to put that out there, and you hit the nail on the head. I want to go back because Delroy Tullock has left a message, and it's quite a long one, but I do want to read this out. He said, I have a question that I would like to ask. What percentage are single parents, male or female? Because I think the child might have a deep feeling of rejection when one parent might not be in the household and the family does not feel as a whole. So this missing piece of the puzzle cannot be replaced until he or she are able to cope with living without that piece on the puzzle and see the complete puzzle with the right support, because a link is missing in the life which needs to be filled. So that is the question for our experts. Tony wants to jump in. Go on, Tony.
Okay, so this is again an area that I excel in, because part of the reason that I'm a member of the 100 Black Men is quite simply this absence of the positive black role model, whether it be a male or a female, but primarily in a one-parent household, you've got one child, especially with, like, for instance, mixed children being raised by a white mother, but you identify as black and you haven't got the black side to help you. You kind of need these mentors, people like myself who go out and we mentor children. We help them understand their self-identity. Yeah. So there are, as I said, there are lots of organizations like 100 Black Men, like Manhood Academy, like Origin, like Westside Young Leaders Academy, to name but a few, Mentivity, who are there to help where you can't find the missing piece of the puzzle. And that missing piece is so important. If you're a single woman and you're raising a boy child, there needs to be that male role model somewhere, an uncle, a cousin. You need to find that. And if you can't find it in their family, you need to look externally, because boys do need that. Girls need it too. If I was raising a girl child as a single dad, I'd want to have a woman in my child's life who could show her the ropes. I'm not comfortable talking to my daughter about periods and, menopause and all these things. It's good that you could have the male deals with the male issues and the female deals with the female issues. But to have a lack of one or the other does create issues. And that's where organizations can come in and be supportive of parents who have that missing dynamic.
Thank you for answering that question, Delroy. I hope that answers your question. Thank you so much, Tony. So, comments in the thread. Amina saying it makes a lot of difference when the team are black or ethnic minority. It did for my son. Ruth Carter is saying, as parents, we are trusting of the professionals, especially the medical ones. But if we could put words to our instincts, it would help. But most times it is a fight. As we're going on, We've got some new followers here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you who have just joined in, this is the After Dark show. This is the adult relationship show where we unpick, we unpack, we go behind the black curtain, and we talk about the subjects that we don't get to talk about as a community. And the show is expanding, it's evolving, and it's moving. It's moving in all different types of areas as we continue. This is week 16 of the show, episode 16. So we are moving. Shelley Titmus says, regarding mental health stigma and discrimination, she's also given a website, www.timetochange.org.uk. So if you want to find out more about stigma and discrimination, that is the website, www.timetochange.org.uk. Thank you for putting that in the comment thread. We're actually coming up to the last half hour of the show. The last half hour of the show. So what I want us to do now is really focus on putting in a solution, focusing on how we help, what things we can put in place now, real time, like now. What can we do? Because I know we only have 2 hours to do the show. So one, I have said that we will do a show on education. And I do realize there was a comment from Kel's earlier on, and Kel was saying, we need to look at slavery and how we have been treated as a community from the Caribbean and Africa. And so that will also be a show. I don't know when that's going to be, but we will also do a show. And I can see Cecile's hand up, so I'll bring you in next, Cecile. And so these are the things that we are looking at. We are looking at all types of discussions. Shell says, it's hard to trust mentors with your children. So many perverts out there who target children from single households. Right. Who said yeah? Is that you?
Oh.
Cecile, I'm going to bring you in. Or is it? I'm going to bring Cecile in first because she's been waiting. But I do get what Shell's saying. But if they've been mentored in a school, works, we have to trust that. It doesn't always work, but we have to trust that that has been put as a safeguarding element for our children. And I say that because I work in schools, and I believe Tony also works in schools as well. And so, as a mentor, as a teacher, my eyes are always open. Always.
I mean, you could say perverts exist in all manners of walks of life, from your bank manager to your school teacher to your bus driver. That's the world. Unfortunately, they exist.
Define pervert.
DBS system does
define pervert.
Hopefully, yeah. So you want me to define pervert?
I'm not skinning teeth about it. I mean, people, define it. I work in nursing, and we've had murderers in my state. A man who murdered 300 people. So I'm very clear about, you have to be very protective towards people's children. So again, define pervert.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at people who abuse children ultimately, and we know there are very many different ways, from sexual abuse, mental abuse, neglect. So when you learn about all the different forms of abuse, that for me is where you can potentially put somebody who's a pervert. For me, I automatically I'm thinking sexual pervert. Yeah, and when I read what Shalomi has written about mentors with her children, not trusting them, I automatically think sexual deviation.
Yeah.
But it comes in various forms.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Tony there in terms of, for me, a pervert is a person whose sexual behavior is regarded as abnormal and unacceptable. We know that children, young people, are groomed in many different scenarios and
To
circumstances.
whom? Right. You remember you're talking to someone who does human sexuality, so I'm seeing it like from all over. You got your definition abnormal. Now, for somebody that could mean like, oh, you know what? I get spanked every so often. That's normal to me. But is that normal to you? I need a. It's like
Right, a cleared.
That's why I'm really kind of solid about that.
Well, we know that an adult, somebody over the age of 18, having sex with a child who is under that age is illegal and is not right. So that, for me, can't hear you. You're on mute.
You're in the United Kingdom. However, if you go to France, it's 14. So you got to bring it all the way down. Remember, I'm over here. So
we're in the UK, and here that, I mean, you can have sex at the age of 16 here, right? It's the age of 16. However, you know, it will be frowned upon here for that to take place. So for instance, you know, you will have a teacher, for instance, somebody who's taught, and this has happened, where the teacher has had a sexual relationship with a young girl who's 15 and has left the UK and gone to France, and they've gone to France to go and get him and bring the child back because it's illegal here.
But I think that's under the remit of over here we call it Megan's Law, but you've got a different name for it.
It might be because of Europe, but that was what happened. So for us here, without, you know, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, for us here, when we're talking about, you know, that kind of a pervert is somebody. I mean, I took somebody for a walk the other day, and we went down an alley, and she said, "Oh, this alley's a bit weird," and I said, "Oh, it's near a school," and I told her the history of the alley. It's just round the corner from where I live, where there was a known flasher. That's a pervert, right?
That's a colloquialism. That's somebody who enjoys flashing their body to get a sexual arousal for themselves and to get the shock factor from someone else. So
but only does it,
but the term is a very kind of like,
it's a broad term.
It's a broad term, but it's also like a street term to me. You understand?
Right.
It's like, this person is a child abuser, a pedophile. That's something that I can work with. As the term over here is, they're a minor attracted person, which I hate. I absolutely hate the term. But this is what I'm working with.
Right.
And in defense of the male teacher who always gets struck with, oh, they're having sex with a female, I have seen over here, it's the female teacher who appears to be grooming the young males, and we just had the death of a very famous woman who had sex with a 12-year-old and got pregnant and married him. She did time, got had 2 children, and then now recently died of cancer. So it's not just a male thing.
No, no, I wasn't saying that it was a male thing.
I just wanted to reflect it. I just wanted to balance the scales here.
Just to give the example, because that's what's happened here recently. Well, not recently, a few months ago. So we are right. So I'm just kind of keeping a track on the time. But again, you know, we know that grooming happens. So Michelle's saying grooming children is in a safe environment, gaining their trust and feeding on their vulnerability. Yes, it happens. It does happen, no doubt. But this is why DBSs are done yearly. And to be fair, as long as you're not caught, right, you just have to see it as it is, right? But again,
don't forget that we have had that huge case of the Catholic Church. Yeah.
It's you know, all around.
That's perversion at
of course.
Very high
but
level.
We don't discuss the Pentecostal church.
Listen, that's another.
Or the Baptist church. No. The Catholics.
Let me just call on right there.
Don't get me started. I do not like pedophiles. Period. Let that be known.
Listen, guys. Listen, and listen up. If we go into this conversation, we will be here all night, and we've only got less than half an hour. That is a different show. completely. And that needs a show of its own. Trust me when I say I have my own things to say about that. For real. For real. I know what I know firsthand. So I would be giving you testament of something that has actually happened to me. So let us not divert off of the conversation that we are on today, which is, you know, how mental health is affecting our well, it's turned into our children, but on a whole. But there was a message that was saying that rejection doesn't need to hurt. I saw it and then it went. If you can pop that up for me, the
I thought the
message is
person said that rejection was like another no or something, words to that effect.
rejection doesn't always have to hurt. It's all about the delivery, tone of voice,
Mhm.
and being mindful of the other person's feelings. And that's true. It just depends on how you receive it, on where you are at the time of that coming to you. If your mental health is all right, and if you don't have feelings for the other person, yeah, it's not going to really bother you that much. But if you are, oh, can you put that message back up from Delroy for me, please? No, you're not hearing me. Because I can't see it. Delroy said rejection is natural. We just have reprogrammed our minds to think rejection is another way of saying no. That's what Delroy Tulloch says. And I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. No offense caused if I'm not. Again, so, you know, rejection is how you receive it and how you balance that, right? It's you know, sometimes things happen, you know, your parents say no and it's like, okay. But then there's sometimes your parent might say no and you'll see the child, all hell's breaking loose because they can't fathom why it's a no. So, and I think rejection works with that throughout our relationships. Ruth Carter saying all industries are at fault. Just saying safeguarding is everyone's business. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And I haven't brought up the we do have. Do you remember I said we do have the golden mic? You know, I actually think the golden mic today.
Tony.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Tony. I
Yeah,
thought I said
yeah.
that out loud. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Look,
thought I was on mute.
I said that without my mouth moving. Yeah, I think Tony gets. Ladies, we get. For those of you who've just come on our panel, every week we've been talking about this golden mic for some time, and we actually have a golden mic, and it's the person whose contribution to the show has been outstanding. So I think today it goes to Tony.
Well done, Tony.
It's taken like 16 episodes.
Yeah. On the one subject that I know a little bit about. But yeah, guys, I mean, you know, listen, I've got my my mental health booklet here. This is the organization. It's called Mental Health First Aid of England. The information, and I just thought it'd be useful for people to understand the different characteristics of mental health that we deal with this particular course by just running through it. It's going to take me a minute, but we deal with depression, anxiety, suicide, psychosis, self-harm, eating disorders, cyberbullying, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, autism, stress, adolescent development, alcohol and substance misuse, racism, personality disorders, cognitive behavior therapy. You know, all of that is part of the stuff that you learn about when you do this particular course. And, you know, once you do that, you kind of get a rounded understanding of what things you need to be able to at a glance identify within adults and children. And those are very, very important things because, you know, so many times, as I think someone mentioned earlier, many of these things get misdiagnosed. you know, and we really have to be careful that, you know, these things are sent and signposted to the right place so that people are getting the right therapy. And, you know, something that, you know, I'm very keen to develop is the network of people who A, identify the issues, but B, who work to resolve the issues in, as Sheshmi was saying, in a holistic manner. Because, you know, as the system works right now, many of our children and adults, as soon as we get any kind of display of mental health, you know, the first thing we start seeing is section, and then start applying the drugs, you know, straight away. Whereas there are so many other things that can come before that, you know. So it's very, very important that these discussions take place. And I'm, funnily enough, this will be first of 3 for this week on mental health. So it's a subject that I'm very, very keen to ensure that, you know, the message that we spread out is one that, you know, can be taken away and utilized. You know, if anyone wants to know more about mental health first aiding or any of these subjects, please get involved, in touch with Yvonne, who can signpost you to us as practitioners or people who can help.
Thank you, Tony. What I want to do is, what I want to do before the end of the show is actually ask, because Sheena has a real-time challenge now. So with our professionals, without putting you on the spot, which I am putting you on the spot, which I'm known for anyway, what I want to know is, are you willing to support Sheena through her journey as she goes through this real-time journey now? I can, you know, there's many of you who have experiences, and Sheena has said, even though Cams is helping her now as the mother, as a woman, you know, as just a friend, as we are all here together, I want to know if any of you are willing to just offer some support to Sheena in her journey moving forward. Now, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I'm just saying, are you willing to support her?
Yes, Sheena.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
So Sheena,
much.
Any
I think
support
it's
yeah.
So same, yes, Sheena. Any support that you need, please do contact me. I think the key message for me is holistic approach. Let's create more awareness about mental health issues and help tackle the stigma around mental health. Also, let's seek help as well. So let's be willing to ask for help and also give help. So I think that's so important. And I think the other things about, Tony was talking about other things that we can do apart from medication, psychology, and social. So looking at just a school setting, I just want to put it out there. And also for people, for adults and for children, you know, we can look at alternative therapies. So looking at things like mindfulness, meditation. You know, these are simple things that, you know, it doesn't have to cost any money. You can get a lot of resources online if people are willing to do the research and put the effort in. Lots of schools are doing it as well. So mindfulness, meditation, these are key tools that I have in my own emotional toolkit box. So I think it works for me. It's going to work for everyone else. We need to practice what we preach. The third thing I want to talk about is just incorporating, you know, being creative, looking at things that a person, you know, like I think someone spoke of Shelley about a social story. You know, we need to build social stories for a person with mental illness. Like with Sheena's son, you know, before he became the person he is now because of the mental illness, you know, he was someone else. Let's build a social story of that person's life and try and incorporate the things that they liked to do. Slowly, piece by piece, we can take baby steps, one step at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's the same with mental health recovery and well-being. It's not going to happen overnight. We don't have a magic wand. We can just change things. But slowly, we can pick the pieces up and we can help people build themselves up again. It's not like seeing a wound and we can put a plaster over it. It's different. Mental health is real. We need to create more mental health awareness. We need to create mental health wellness. And then the last thing was looking at being creative. So what I was trying to say is looking at incorporating things that the person liked to do. What are the hobbies that person liked? Music, dancing, start with these little activities. In schools, we can also incorporate that with children, use more positive behavior support systems. It's a psychological assessment of managing people's behaviors. We can also look at positive reinforcement. So going back to the reward system, rewarding children for their good behavior, and then also, and giving them incentives. And then also things like patted dog therapy. Some schools offer therapy for children with using animals. We can be creative. We can use different things. We can look at sensory input. So looking at stress balls. If people get stressed, young children especially, look at incorporating them with different tools like gadgets or things that they can hold, that they can feel them secure, and they can help them with emotional recovery. So it's not just about giving medication. It's not just about prescribing things, but it's about looking holistically, looking at the diet, what type of foods they're eating as well. I do a Happy Doctor's Kitchen, so I'll be keen to talk about, what type of foods are they eating, and looking at other things. So, but I think key for me, the message is get help. If you need help, seek, ask for help. It's really important. Don't be shy. We need to normalize mental illness so that anyone can pick up the phone or anyone can put a post up and say, I'm struggling, I need help. And that people are going to be human. And, especially now coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've learned that we need to be more united. We need to show that Ubuntu spirit. I'm from South Africa, so it's about I am because you are. So it's about showing that Ubuntu spirit which Nelson Mandela, strived for and fought for our country. And also it's about, Black Lives Matter. Tony spoke about it out of George Floyd. It is about the deeper rooted problems is about racism. And that has affected us. It will affect us throughout our lives unless we address these issues. The bigger picture is about racism. It's about Black Lives Matter. It's about all lives matter. And yes, things need to change, but it starts with us first. We each have that responsibility. We need to be courageous enough to start having these conversations and also creating that awareness and being, like Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chesney. We have 10 minutes left of the show, so I just want to go through. Cecile, just give us your last bit of input, and we're just going to go around. So, guys, be mindful of the time, please. You have about 7 minutes between you. So go for it, Cecile.
Okay, just what I wanted to say was about some of the posts that Shelley's put up about the Ollie Foundation. So the Ollie Foundation is One Life Lost is Enough. So they do a lot of work about suicide prevention. They do the first aiders as well. And they are based in Hertfordshire, but they are looking at some point to do Bedfordshire as well. So we do have some things around us, around Luton and surrounding areas that people can actually tap into. And I think those are the kind of things that people need to be looking at, especially online. And then just lastly, Sheena, yes, contact me. Get my details from Yvonne if you want to get in touch. Okay.
Lovely. Sheena, come in because I know you had your hand up. You wanted to come in. Come in, darling.
Yeah, you're saying, Doctor, about the patted dog therapy. Now, as it goes, David loves dogs.
Okay.
He really, really loves dogs. And
Lovely.
for some reason, dogs seem to gravitate around him. Now, we don't actually have pets ourselves, but I love dogs as well. It's the only reason we haven't got a dog is because the house isn't big enough. But yeah, he loves dogs. If you just see the way he is with them, they just come up to him and they, he's just like he knows how to stroke them and, keep them calm and sort of like they'll roll over. He's amazing with dogs. So I think
that's amazing.
dog therapy would be really helpful.
Yes. Definitely. I'll find out some more information and pass it on to you. And I'm looking forward to chatting to you.
Thank
Fantastic.
you. Looking
Kim?
forward to speaking to both of you. Yeah.
They have a saying in Jamaica, the stone that the builder refused becomes
Shall be
the
the
head
head
cornerstone.
cornerstone.
Right?
Yes.
Now, I used to laugh and I never really quite understood it as I got older. You get certain life experiences, and that's not just with partners, but when your friends just like reject you, or a family member might, and you learn how to create a coping mechanism for yourself. Learning the art of receiving a no should be in everybody's kind of coping mechanism, because a no can be a good thing. No,
Yes.
I don't think you should go on vacation with the person that wants to pay a flight for you, because that doesn't sound right to me. And I remember my mother saying that. I was like, but mommy, the man said, "I'm gonna give me $2,000." And you know what? He wanted me to carry drugs.
Mm.
But it was a good no. You understand? So no is not always a bad thing. It's just that we're so used to, oh, it's no, you don't want to talk to me. No, she might not want to talk to you. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But learning that would be good. And anything you need, Sheena, I'm just a phone call away. I'm about 5 hours behind you, but I am a phone call away. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that, Kim. Just to say, Tisha says, ooh, Hertfordshire, Tisha's actually raising money for suicide prevention for young children for her birthday. So if anyone wants to donate, please check out Tisha Braid's Facebook page. I'm agreeing with Tisha Braid that more support for primary schools regarding well-being. That's Ruth Carter. Ruth Carter is the Liberty coach and works with parents and children. That is her expertise. So that would be someone else to connect with as well. I am going to bring in the gold mic holder today. Tony, you've got
Hi,
you've got
guys.
a few minutes.
Okay, so yeah, been a great conversation, guys. I wasn't quite sure where it was gonna go, but you know, as we always end up with these chats, it's great that we organically all end up going in the same direction with our different life experiences to bring to the table. Sheena, all I can say for you, young lady, is quick wins, which is kind of my story on life. You know, find quick wins, find opportunities to get a win, whether it be, you know, obviously David is good with dogs, and I'm not saying get a dog, but find a way for him to be more involved with dogs. Get him to sign
Yeah,
into.
we have family members who
Yeah,
you know,
you
he
know,
knows we go to certain places all the time
so
with
yeah,
the
you
dog.
know, quick wins. I mean, when I'm working with kids who are troubled, you know, listen, it's, you know, let's go down the park, let's play football for an hour, let's go in the boxing gym and start banging on a bag for an hour, let's go to the cinema and watch a film, let's go bowling and bowl for an hour, you know. And I know it's just seen as, well, it's just life experiences, but first and foremost, life is about having more happy moments than sad moments. So by bringing more of those to the table, we live a better quality of life. Now, the problem with school is, unfortunately, it's a lot of pressure on our adolescents at a period of time when they're probably not quite all ready for it, which is why I made a comment about, you know, we kind of expect that kids are going to go in at year 4 and come out at year 7 and then go to year whatever, and they should just be fitting in these blocks. And that's not the world, you know. And I've seen some amazing schools that look at schooling in a completely different manner. They say, listen, let's stop all this. You've got to be in this year because you're that age. Because quite simply, you might not need that. You know, listen, there are some kids who have got a master's degree at age 14.
Yes.
The schooling system, as it is designed, is not made for those children. Yeah. Whereas there are some children who struggle to read at age 14 and 15, but by 25, they're running multi-million-pound businesses. So just try to think about, systems and structures aren't always necessarily the way they should be for your child, but quick wins, try and find a way to start them on a road of well-being.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you so much. Listen, one last comment I'm going to read. A dog shelter, Sheena Campbell, could be a good place for your son to gain work experience and a reference if he's ready for that, or do it as a hobby. I'm mindful he's young and deserves a full life. Absolutely. You will
Yeah, that sounds
know.
great.
Yeah. So I actually know David, and he is a really nice young man. We worked together. He was one of
Lovely.
my students. And so, David has got so much potential. He's a lovely young man, a lot of potential, in spite of, the hardships. So, Sheena, you have my support 100%, as always. So, guys, we've come to the end of the show. Normally I will have, a little monologue to say, but actually we are at the end. So what
Sorry,
I want
Yvonne, just to say,
we can't. Sorry, we're at the end of the show. Sorry.
Okay, it's
We
about
literally,
podcasts for children.
we
I
will
think
have
watch
we have to
Okay,
stop. We have to stop.
sorry.
Sorry, we're on a time factor. So guys, if we will do another show, there's a show next week. Be here, be ready at 10 o'clock. And we will have great conversation. The normal panel will be back next week, but we will be having a show about education. We will be having a show about slavery. We will continue this conversation at another time. I'm sorry, we've run out of time, guys. And so I'm just going to have enough time to say, everybody, can you say bye? And we will be back next week. Ciao for now. Ciao.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, take care.
Bye.